Welcome back to Youth Ignited with me, Yaseen Kippie. Before the break, we were discussing the social relevance of Aqidah, and based on the different, foreign worldviews and attacks on Islam, we've seen many responses. We've seen the response of the modernist view, which means that if the Quranic ayah or the hadith doesn't respond to modern science, we should automatically reject it. Another response we've seen is a traditional response. Let's renew Islam based on an understanding, authentic understanding of 1,400 years, based on that scholarship and the Quran and the Sunnah. Another understanding is that let's reform Islam into what we understand the Quran and Sunnah to be, based on a political ideology. Now, Kareem, is Islam a political ideology?
I would say yes and no. In a way, Quran and Sunnah, Sharia, Islamic law gives answers to all the questions, whether they public or private, individual and social. Does it make it a political ideology? It depends what we mean by saying ideology. If by saying ideology we mean a plan how to build paradise on the earth, something which have never been existed but to put in place, then we would say no, because in fact we believe in the opposite. There used to be paradise on the earth, which was in Madinatul Munawwara, in a prophetic Medina, and what we have to do, we have to go back to that paradise on the earth and expand it and spread it throughout the world.
See, the issue that the youth has is that everything in the world is wrong because Muslims are not in control, and therefore we should elect a leader, we should have an army, and we should go attack everyone, and we will be on top again. I find that this is a very emotional response to that. And so what advice would you have to actually correctly go back to Medinan society in a correct manner that's not emotional and violent, So how would you actually advise us to do that?
We could ask ourselves, why are Muslims not in control? Or why would, let's say, our values are not in control, and the secular values, Western values, non-Muslim values are in control? And I would relate it to the same thing, the decline in Aqidah. Starting from the Darwinist theory, starting from the ideas of liberalism and secularism and capitalism and the modern understanding of what democracy is, we have lost it. We're not in charge anymore, and we ourselves dominated on a value or on a level of values. So for us, for what's very important to understand, we don't want to be in control as individuals, as people, as me, Kareem, and Yaseen, us being in charge and leading the armies. It's not the point. The point is we want the right values, the right morals, the right just laws to be in charge. Based on what they're going to be, it can't be done only on violence. Violence is the part of life, is the way a state punishes and rewards. That's what we all accept it, all people. But what is the way forward? The way forward is to understand what your values are. The way forward is to understand why are you Muslim. By saying you are Muslim, it means submission. What do you submit yourself to? Why do you submit yourself? The truth is, we have the rise of ISIS. One of the top 10 problems today in the world, definitely. Why are they? Why are Muslims so reckless and so confused that they leave their families and going to join the ISIS? I would say for the same reason. Lack of correct Aqidah. If they believe it is their responsibility to go and join ISIS, them as Muslims. ISIS, or joining ISIS, is just another extremity from somebody without having correct Aqidah, joining the gang of 26 and 27, or somebody going into another extremity and joining ISIS or Al-Qaeda and whatever. It is different faces of the same problem, lack of the correct understanding what Islam is.
That's the nature of the world currently, isn't it? Extremism. We have extremism in politics, in sports, skydiving, all of these things, but also extremism begets extremism. And if we look at the nature of the modern world, it's an extreme society with regards to everything. And so I find that we've adopted that same a framework of let's be radical against the radical ideas of the modern world. But how, and we know that Islam is the wasatiyah, it's the middle way. How do we actually, with understanding our values, like you've said, and also understanding the values of these institutions that we go to, because that's one of the great crimes of the modern secular institution, is the lack of acknowledgement of various other forms of knowledge. You know, that our epistemology is more than just empirical worldview, but it's also with regards to the wahi. How do we actually correctly understand our values and that values in a way that is balanced, you know, with reference to Aqidah? Because you've had many groups of Aqidah, the Qadiriyya, who would say that everything is based on Allah's will, and then you had the opposite, and all of these different, you know, free will, determinism. How do you actually strike a balance in that within the framework of Aqidah?
Within the framework of Islam, we even have the right terminology for the extremities, ifrat and tafrit. Okay. Being extreme to the extent of being lenient and being lax, and being extreme in terms of being too harsh and strict in everything. It comes, as you mentioned, is the Aqidah. It can come in a sphere of governance and so on and so forth. So we have the direction, we have the guidance, the middle way, beyond extremity. Now, to apply this guidance in a modern time, and what is lacking, we are lacking understanding of the world we're in now. We have no understanding of that path or that road which has been taken and by the Western civilization. How we find ourselves in a modern situation today. How it happened that the liberal values, that democratic form of government, multi-party system, and the Republic of South Africa, how it became a universal franchise and became something which is not disputed, something which Francis Fukuyama called in his book, The End of History. So the debate is finished. So we find ourselves in this situation. We don't know how it arrived there, and then we have two reactions, two extremities. One reaction is say we accept all of this, we are backwards, so let's catch up with the Western civilization, let's accept all their values. And it is the destruction in the Akhirah, as you know, because you can't critically accept everything from non-Muslim, and destruction in the Dunya, because world is already moving to the what they call postmodern era, while Muslims still trying to catch up with the modernity and trying to build a nation state. Arab Spring showed that all this nation state are collapsing now. And there is another extremity of ISIS. When the whole world is already moving fast to the digital era, we have some people trying to take us back to dark ages with the Inquisition, burning people alive, and broadcasting it all over the world. So these are the two extremities based on lack of correct understanding of Aqidah and understanding of the time we are in.
Yeah, well, so we outlined the theoretical framework that we ought to look at with regards to the social relevance, also political relevance of that. But with regards to a practical advice that you'd give to the youth out there, how do we learn about Aqidah on the one hand and how it applies to the modern world? What is that, steps to take as a student, as a beginner student, someone who does study at these universities already, and they feel like they've wasted 3 years getting indoctrinated in the system, but they haven't, because now they're open to an understanding that we need to critically evaluate what's been happening there to restore our understanding to a way that is Islamic, to a way that is traditional, to be inclusive and all of those things. What practical advice would you have based on that to study that?
Based on this, I would say there is a bad news, which is at the same time as a good news, is that there is not yet studies, or very little of those studies, which put the science of Aqidah in the modern context and allow you to make sense of you as Muslim today. So the practical advice is go study Aqidah, but then at the same time you have to be aware that you will be one of the pioneers of studying and implementing Aqidah in the modern times. Yes. When you will be studying the Aqidah and you will be looking at the question that hukum belongs to Allah.
Yes.
Husn and qubh, that what is beautiful and ugly, good and bad, is determined by Allah. You will have to make a reference to the modern idea of the popular sovereignty, that people through democratic elections and legislation can decide what is right, what is wrong. These books of applying Aqidah to the modern political and social studies are still yet to be written, lectures are still yet to be delivered. So I think we are in a difficult times, but at the same time it's exciting times, because we have a rare chance to be one of those pioneers of applying Aqidah to the modern times.
I mean, one of the main steps that I took with regards to an understanding of how do we actually understand the holistic nature of our deen is that I studied a few books in the beginning of Aqidah, and there are many books that one can study within the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, understanding who Allah is, who the Prophet ﷺ is, how the Wahy came. What advice with regards to a book, bearing in mind that there is a responsibility of correctly applying Aqidah in the modern world, are there any classical works that you could recommend that the youth should, look particular interest in, and also with to actually study it with a teacher, because I think that's really practical advice as well. How do we get started, basically?
I think to start with, the real way to nurture your soul is the books of Imam Ghazali and the Ihya Ulumuddin. I think is something which must be in every household. In terms of the theoretical modern discovery which actually tackled this matter, such as I would mention the name of Sheikh Said Fuda, which is the great scholar from Jordan, who is one of those few people who is able to respond to the Catholic Pope, who is able to respond to Hegel, to Kant, and before him is the last Sheikh al-Islam of Osmanli Caliphate, Sheikh Mustafa Sabri rahimahullah.
Fawda wrote the Sanusi, a commentary on the Sanusi, which is available in English. Thank you very much, Sidi Kareem Maliki, for joining us today. Thank you for viewing this episode of Youth Ignited with me, Yaseen Kippie. I'll see you the next time.